saved this seat for you," said the lonely wheelchair girl to the single dad CEO millionaire at the Café. The winter afternoon light filtered through the frost-trimmed windows of Riverside Café, casting soft shadows across the wooden tables. Carolyn sat in her wheelchair near the corner window, watching the Christmas shoppers hurry past with their bright bags and determined faces. She came here every Tuesday and Thursday, always at 3 o'clock, always to the same spot by the window where she could watch the world move by. She was 28 years old, though sometimes she felt much older. The accident 3 years ago had changed everything. Not just her legs, but her entire life had shifted on that rainy October night. Her friends had slowly drifted away, uncomfortable with a new reality. Her fiancé had left within 6 months, unable to handle what he called the situation. Now she lived alone in a small apartment 2 blocks away, working remotely as a graphic designer. And these cafe visits were often the only time she spoke to anyone besides her mother's weekly phone calls. Caroline took a sip of her chamomile tea and opened her sketchbook. Drawing helped quiet the loneliness that seemed to grow louder with each passing day. She was sketching the old oak tree outside when she noticed him. He was tall, probably in his late 30s, with dark hair touched with just a hint of silver at the temples. He wore an expensive black suit that spoke of boardrooms and important meetings, but his face carried something else entirely. Exhaustion. Worry, that kind of weight that no amount of money could lift. Beside him stood a little girl, no more than 3 years old, with blonde pigtails and rosy cheeks. She clutched a worn teddy bear and looked up at her father with wide, uncertain eyes. The cafe was unusually crowded that day, every table occupied by couples and groups enjoying the holiday atmosphere. Caroline watched as the man, whose name she would soon learn was James, approached table after table, only to be turned away. People shook their heads, gestured to their belongings, spread across empty chairs, claimed friends were coming. No one wanted to share their space. The little girl's lower lip began to tremble. Caroline recognized that. Look, she had seen it in the mirror often enough during her first year in the wheelchair. That moment when disappointment threatens to spill over into tears. Something stirred in Caroline's chest. Before she could second-guess herself, she raised her hand slightly and called out, her voice softer than she intended. "Excuse me." James turned, his tired eyes finding hers. "I saved this seat for you," Caroline said, gesturing to the empty chair across from her. It was a lie. Of course, she hadn't saved it for anyone. She never did. But something about this moment felt important, like a small door opening in a wall she had built around herself. James's expression shifted, surprise giving way to something like relief. "Are you sure? We don't want to intrude." "Please," Carolyn said. And this time her smile was genuine. "I could use the company." James guided his daughter to the table, pulling out the chair for her before taking the seat beside her. Up close, Carolyn could see the fine lines around his eyes, the slight stubble on his jaw that suggested he had been too busy to shave that morning. "I'm James," he said, extending his hand. His grip was warm and firm. "This is Emma." "Caroline," she replied, then looked at the little girl. "Hello, Emma! That's a lovely teddy bear." Emma clutched the bear tighter, but managed a shy smile. "His name is Honey," she whispered. "That's a perfect name," Caroline said warmly. James ordered hot chocolate for Emma and a black coffee for himself. Caroline noticed how his hands shook slightly as he helped Emma remove her pink coat. There was a story here, she sensed, pain that matched her own in different ways. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, Emma contentedly sipping her hot chocolate and leaving a small foam mustache on her upper lip. Caroline found herself smiling, a real smile that reached her eyes for the first time in weeks. "Thank you," James said quietly, his voice carrying a depth of meaning beyond the simple words. "For the seat? For your kindness. Today has been particularly difficult, and this small gesture means more than you might realize." Carolyn met his eyes and saw something she recognized. Loneliness. It was different from hers, but no less real. "We all need a place to rest sometimes," she said simply. Over the next hour, their conversation unfolded naturally. James shared that he was the CEO of a tech company he had built from nothing. Over the past 15 years, the success had come, the money had followed, but it had cost him everything else. His wife, Emma's mother, had passed away from cancer 18 months ago. Since then, he had been struggling to balance his demanding work with being a present father to Emma. "The nannies are wonderful," he said, staring into his coffee cup, "but they're not her mother, and I'm failing at being enough for her. Today was supposed to be our afternoon together, but I just realized I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to be what she needs." Caroline felt her heart constrict. She recognized that feeling of inadequacy, of feeling like you were failing at the most basic requirements of life. "May I tell you something?" Caroline asked gently. "Jamis nadad. 3 years ago, I was engaged. I had a job I loved at a design firm. I went running every morning. I was planning a wedding." She paused, her fingers tracing the rim of her teacup. "Then one night, a drunk driver ran a red light. When I woke up in a hospital 2 weeks later, everything was different. My legs didn't work anymore. My fiancé couldn't handle it. My friends didn't know what to say. So eventually, they stopped saying anything at all." James listened intently, his expression reflecting both sympathy and understanding. "For a long time," Caroline continued, "I thought my life was over. I thought I had nothing left to offer anyone, including myself. But slowly, very slowly, I learned something. We're all broken in different ways. We're all carrying things that feel too heavy. And the only way through it is to keep showing up, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard." She looked at Emma, who was now carefully drawing a picture on a napkin with a crayon the waitress had brought. "You showed up today," Caroline said to James. "You brought your daughter to a cafe, even though you felt uncertain. You're trying. That's not failing, James. That's love." James's eyes grew bright. With unshed tears, he cleared his throat, looking away for a moment. When he turned back, there was gratitude written across his face. "How do you do it?" he asked. "How do you manage the loneliness?" Caroline was quiet for a long moment. "Honestly, some days I don't manage it well at all. Some days I sit in my apartment and wonder if anyone would notice if I just disappeared. But then I come here to this cafe and I watch people. Get them. I remind myself that life is still happening, even if mine looks different than I planned." "Look, Daddy!" Emma suddenly exclaimed, holding up her napkin. She had drawn 3 stick figures, a tall one, a small one, and one in what was unmistakably a wheel. Above them, she had attempted to write friends in wobbly letters. Both adults fell silent, staring at the simple drawing that somehow captured something profound. "Emma," James said softly, "that's beautiful." The little girl beamed with pride, then carefully slid the napkin across to Caroline. "For you," she said. Caroline accepted the gift with trembling hands, her vision blurring slightly. "Thank you, Emma. I'll treasure this always." As the afternoon light began to fade, James checked his watch reluctantly. "We should probably get going. I have a conference call at 5, and Emma needs dinner." "Of course," Caroline said, though she felt the familiar weight of loneliness beginning to settle back over her shoulders. James stood, helping Emma back into her coat, but then he paused, seeming to wrestle with something internally. "Caroline," he said finally, "would you consider having coffee with us again? Same time next week. Emma and we could use a friend. I think maybe you could too." Caroline felt something crack open in her chest, a small fissure in the wall of isolation she had built. It would be easy to say no, to protect herself from potential disappointment. But she thought about Emma's drawing, about James's honest vulnerability, about her own words, about showing up even when it's hard. "I would like that very much," she said. James smiled. a genuine smile that transformed his tired face. "It's a date, then. A friend date?" he added quickly. And Carolyn found herself laughing for the first time in months. As they prepared to leave, Emma suddenly darted forward and threw her small arms around Caroline's neck in an impulsive hug. Carolyn froze for just a moment, then wrapped her arms around the little girl, breathing in the sweet scent of her strawberry shampoo. "Thank you for sharing your table," Emma whispered. "Thank you for sharing your afternoon," Caroline whispered back. After they left, Caroline sat alone at the table for a long while, holding Emma's napkin, drawing carefully in her hands. The cafe had grown quieter as the crowd thinned. Outside, the streetlights were beginning to flicker on, and the first evening stars were appearing in the deepening blue sky. She thought about the strange and unexpected gift of this day. She had offered a simple seat, a small gesture that cost her nothing. But somehow, in that exchange, she had received something far more valuable. A reminder that connection was still possible, that her life still held meaning, that loneliness didn't have to be a permanent condition. Carolyn carefully tucked the napkin into her sketchbook. Then she wheeled herself toward the door, nodding goodbye to the waitress, who always remembered her chamomile tea. As she made her way home through the December evening, past the lit windows where families gathered around dinner tables, past the couples walking hand in hand, Caroline felt different. Not healing was a longer journey than one afternoon could provide, but lighter somehow, as if a small burden had been lifted. She realized that James had needed that seat at her table just as much as she had needed to offer it, in his exhaustion and uncertainty, in Emma's shy smile and impulsive hug. Caroline had glimpsed a truth she had forgotten, that sometimes our deepest healing comes not from being helped, but from helping others. That in making space at our table for someone else's loneliness, we make our own loneliness smaller. The following Tuesday, Caroline arrived at the cafe at 3 o'clock as usual. But this Chimi, she wasn't alone. James and Emma were already there, waiting by the window with hot chocolate and chamomile tea already ordered. Emma ran to her as soon as she entered, talking excitedly about a picture she had drawn at preschool. And as Caroline settled into a familiar spot with her new friends, she understood something profound. She had thought that moment of saying, "I saved this seat for you," was a small kindness she was offering to a stranger. But really, it was grace, the kind that works both ways, that heals the giver and receiver alike. That reminds us all that we're not as alone as we sometimes feel. In the end, maybe that's what we're all looking for. Someone to notice we're struggling. Someone brave enough to offer a seat at their table. Someone willing to show up, even when showing up is hard. And maybe, just maybe, we're all capable of being that someone for another person. The winter afternoon light continued to stream through the frost-rimmed windows. But now, it felt warmer somehow, as if the simple act of 3 lonely people choosing to be a little less lonely together had changed the very quality of the light itself. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like, share, and subscribe. Your comments about moments of unexpected kindness in your own life are always welcome. Sometimes the stories we share remind us that we're all connected in our struggles and our hopes.